Game day's here, I can hear the crowd. Turn on the lights, fans are cranked up and loud. Red or blue, we wear it proud. Yeah, we love our teams in this border town. Chiefs and Royals, Boo Mizzou, Rock Chalk, Jayhawk, KU. Hear that drum pounding in your feet. Yeah, you're marching to the beat of KC.
What is going on, YouTube? What is going on, Kansas City? And what is going on, everybody? And welcome to the beat of KC. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Lucas Murphy, and I'm absolutely amped right now. I feel like I have a celebrity on the channel. Jack Johnson obviously comes to us from Locked On Royals from the Locked On Network. And also, he contributes quite a bit at 810 Sports Radio here in Kansas City. Jack, how are you doing, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing great, Lucas. I'm always happy to jump on and talk Royals baseball here on December 3rd, right? I love all other sports, don't get me wrong, but I'd be lying if I said I'm enjoying the snow on the ground and still months away from when the Royals report to surprise Arizona.
Heck yeah. It gives you a little bit of kind of, I guess, a break, because I do know you do the Chiefs post-game show. And obviously the Chiefs have kind of been struggling a little bit, so probably gives you a little break to kind of decompress.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, especially the way the season is gone. Not that I don't enjoy doing the post game. I love to, talk about that team, whether they're in an upswing. They've won, 5 in a row, 6 in a row, winning the Super Bowl, when they're not playing well like they are right now. But baseball's always got my heart. It's what I enjoy talking about every single month of the year, and very much looking forward to diving into some stuff with you.
Heck yeah. Well, I first off, I want to tell you, I really enjoy watching your mailbags, because I think that's a significant thing for the offseason. It gives a lot of people the opportunity to ask questions, whether they're, spot on, or some of them can be pretty kind of erratic on some of the trades and things like that. But it's just nice to kind of see the mailbag, because you're getting to answer questions that I feel a lot of the fans are curious. And that's kind of where I'm going to lead with my first question is, obviously the Royals, in my opinion, they're going to be more related to trades, because the Kansas City Royals aren't going to be able to spend big money for guys like Kyle Tucker, all those guys, we know that. So they're going to be more attached to trades. And obviously more recently we've seen, the ties to Boston, and Alex Spire comes out and says, hey, Cole Ragans is the one that the Red Sox are interested in. Can you just kind of elaborate really on how the Ragans idea really kind of maybe came about, or why he's now the target versus a Chris Bubic?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I know for a lot of Royals fans, your immediate reaction is, no, hell no. You're not giving Cole Ragans up in a deal for a guy like Jaren Duran. And these two teams are in similar positions where they have players to move, but they don't have to move these players, right? We've seen in the past with the Royals, whether it be the offseason or the deadline, when they were barreling toward 100 losses or soon to be a 100-loss team, you kind of were up against the clock. It's like, do you want to roll the dice that this guy may or may not have high value in July? Or, do we pull the trigger now and trade away this guy in December, trade away this guy in January? And so with Boston, you might as well ask for the moon off the get-go, which, the Royals, I'll be honest with you, they're going to have to be so unbelievably floored by a deal to move Cole Ragans, because they know the tremendous upside. But if you're Boston, right, in your bloom, you're saying, he's only done it once at the big league level, right? So you asking for Duran and, Christian Campbell and maybe Connolly early or Peyton Tolley, right? Multiple guys for one pitcher. Boston's going to push back. And I view this analogy of, we've all done this, right, Lucas? When you go into a job meeting and you want to get a pay raise, right? You always ask for what you don't think you're going to get, and then it dwindles down to what you're probably going to get, right? So I feel that that's what Boston's doing is, we do like Noah Cameron, or we do like Chris Bubic, but what's the harm in asking for Cole Ragans right now? And the Royals just aren't desperate to move someone like Cole Ragans. They badly want an outfielder. Let's not get that twisted. They really, really want a outfielder that can change the middle of their order or the top of the order. And I have 90% plus confidence they're going to get that done and get it done through trade. but it's going to take time because at this point in the offseason, I know we got the winter meetings next week. Teams just aren't going to be jumping at the first offer, right? The Cardinals and Brendan Donovan, they got 20 suitors out there. So you're really going to have to stand out on December 3rd to be able to, acquire a guy like him. But as for Boston, I just see that they're trying to, shoot for the moon, see if Cole Ragans could be moved. And the Royals are doing the right thing and saying, we'll listen to offers here. We're not going to, really get too deep into conversations. But you never want to say, hey, nobody's, going to be traded here. This guy, we're not even listening to offers. It's always smart to listen to offers just to see where another team might be.
For sure. No, I agree 100%. And I guess that kind of leads me to another question. The Kansas City Royals, like you even mentioned it, the trade deadline and now kind of into the early offseason have consistently been tied to Duran in Boston. Do you really feel like he's the guy, in my opinion? Like, is this just something that is popular and it's, been talked about? Do you really feel like he would be the guy? Because I like what he's capable of doing, but he does have a few flaws in some cases. And I'm curious if he really would be a guy that would fit what the Kansas City Royals are truly trying to do, or would it be more plausible to give up maybe a little bit more to get a guy in Donovan who I feel maybe matches up just a little bit better, has a little bit more versatility? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say that, Brendan Donovan, I've always felt is the better fit for a variety of reasons. I mean, if you're going to trade pitching to a team, I mean, it does suck that it'd be the Cardinals because you got this in-state rivalry, but it's also a National League team that is almost committing to a little bit of a rebuild or a reshifting, if you will, in how they want to go about building their roster. Where with Boston, that's a team you're actively competing against for a wild card spot. We're gonna be competing against in October. So if you get Jaren Duran, it definitely changes your outfield. It significantly raises the floor in production. But if you have to trade away Noah Cameron and Blake Mitchell to a team like Boston, now you're going to have to go through them as well, and you're strengthening their team. But I'll always go back to something that JJ Picollo said. It was when he acquired Cole Ragans. I could be misspeaking on that. It was one of their bigger trades in 2023, 2024. And it was, to get a good player, you got to give up a good player, right? And as fans, right, Lucas, we always like to say, oh, you got fleeced, right? I love it when the Royals fleece somebody because whoever we trade sucks for that team and we get a great player, right? But GMs truthfully hope that both sides benefit from it. Why? Because when you negotiate in the future with other teams, you don't want to be known as that team that's sending bad or defective players. So Royals fans need to prepare that if you want them to get that outfield, if you want them to get a Duran, get a Brendan Donovan, look, the return for that is going to be hefty. But they're in this position now where does having 7, 8 starters on their roster, speaking of the pitching rotation, is that going to get them closer to October? Or do they need that league average to well above league average bat like a Jaren Duran, like a Brendan Donovan? I mean, we all know how awful the offensive production has been from that outfield. This is the offseason that they're putting their foot down a little bit. The last two, it was, we'll see if MJ Melendez can bounce back. We'll see if Kyle Isbell can be a league average bat. We'll see if Hunter Renfroe in a fully healthy season can be a guy that he was back in San Diego or be the guy that he was in Boston. And that didn't happen. And so now that you missed the postseason, it's not really a wake-up call, but it's pushing them more to, hey, what Cleveland's done so well, why they've won this division so many years. They develop pitching, and they're not scared to trade pitching. Why? Because they can replace a number 3, number 4 in the rotation with another guy who's a number 3 or number 4. And to that point about Cole Ragans, I don't believe you can replicate Cole Ragans. You can replicate Noah Cameron or Chris Bubich with either guy. You trade Noah Cameron, I think Chris Bubich can give you Noah Cameron's production. You trade Chris Bubich, I feel Noah Cameron can give you Chris Bubich production.
For sure. No, I agree. And one of the biggest things that stuck with me with Dayton Moore was he said it right at the end of his tenure with the Royals was they really focus on getting the currency of baseball and that's pitching. And I feel like, when the regime transitioned to Picollo, that's really something that we've kind of really excelled at is getting the currency in baseball. We've really kind of gotten some pretty solid starting pitching. And I think for the first few years of his tenure, they really hit on the fact that they're going to have success with the pitching, and it may or may not help them win baseball games by limiting runs, although we may not be scoring the runs at the same capacity. I think now that they're realizing, hey, we have a decent rotation, it's time to actually contribute the hitting, which would win us more games on top of the pitching. So I'm right there with you on that. And so we obviously touched on Donovan. We touched on the pitching. One of the things that I really want to ask you, we know Vinnie Pasquantino is very good with media. He speaks really well. We've seen him interview Shohei Ohtani and do some pretty cool stuff. Do you think, because he knows how to kind of play the system, he's obviously taking batting practice with Brendan Donovan. Do you think that he was doing that just because he knows the hype and what that could have brought the Kansas City fan base? Do you think there's any merit to that, or do you think it was just a coincidence?
I think it's a little bit of both because, Vinny is so online. He's so in touch with stuff like that. He's a great ambassador for the sport. He's incredibly likable. It's why he was picked as one of the guys to be involved in World Series coverage. And, I've always said this about Vinny, that Bobby's the best player on this team, but Vinny's the leader of this team. So Vinny's the guy that is, not in a derogatory way, he's the mouthpiece, right? He's the guy you want speaking in front of the cameras, whether it be a great win or a bad loss. You want him to be that guy. And he's also somebody that could be your tool in recruiting players to your team. Now, it's different with Brendan Donovan. If Brendan Donovan was a free agent, I would have been able to talk about that for a few episodes, because that's, standing out to me that maybe Vinnie Pasquantino is in his ear a little bit. But since Brendan Donovan is under contract, he's in St. Louis, now, there's nothing Brendan Donovan can do about it, right? He knows he's getting traded, that's for sure. But that's going to be something that happens with the front offices and J.J. Piccolo in trying to strike a deal with St. Louis. But I have no doubt in my mind that they could address the elephant in the room of, we're taking batting practice, but a lot of teams are calling about you. And how does that impact you? How has that impacted your offseason when, you're one of the more coveted trade pieces out there? So I'm sure that was discussed. Was he recruiting him to Kansas City or telling him how great it was? I don't really know on that. But I will say this, by posting that, man, it doesn't. He's not stupid, right? He's somebody that knows that would get a little bit of a reaction. So I'm sure there was something to that.
For sure. No, I was like, man, I feel like we have to make a video on that, because you got to make a connection, whether it's really a real thing or not. And I think it gets people excited, because that's a huge player. The last thing I want to backpedal just a little bit, because I do have one more question on the trade. Obviously, early on we were mentioned to Taylor Ward. He obviously goes to Baltimore, but we were attached to Anaheim still with the potential idea of maybe a Joe Adell. Are there any other, and again, we so focused on Boston because it was so hot, but are there any other trade ideas out there that you like that are in existence, like an Adell I know if there for a while we were attached to Brian Reynolds from the Pirates. So are there any other guys out there that you think still could be potentially an option that are not being talked about? I know you just recently posted the Luis Robert thing. I'm not sure who posted that from ESPN, but do you know, maybe some options that could still be out there?
It's so tough because it was even reported by Ken Rosenthal that the right-handed outfielder trade market is so slim. I mean, there's just not many options out there. And the Royals, in a perfect world, right, if you're able to walk up and order something, right, in the same way we walk up to the bar and order a beer, we order food, you have your craft exactly what you want. You want the perfect drink, the perfect item of food that you may be ordering. And for the Royals, if they were doing the same thing in a baseball sense, they would love to walk up and say, we want a right-handed outfielder that can play defense, is a well above average bat, has a little bit of pop, can run a little bit. I mean, if that was their perfect world. But the MLB offseason isn't the perfect world. They're not going to turn away a left-handed bat simply because he's left-handed. You don't really have that luxury. Now, if there was 30 trade options that were right-handed outfielders, maybe you can be a little bit more picky. But that's just the reality of it. There aren't many guys that are good right-handed outfielders that are being shopped and are on teams that are willing to trade, I guess I would say. But, Taylor Ward was somebody, Lucas, that they've wanted for 2 to 2.5 years. I mean, they actively tried to get Taylor Ward multiple times. And the Angels just never really backed down on their asking price. They always wanted someone like Carter Jensen. They wanted someone like Blake Mitchell. And the Royals, as much as they like Taylor Ward, they weren't willing to do that. And now that we've seen Carter Jensen play a little bit, it's no wonder that they wanted to hang on to Carter Jensen and not go get someone like Taylor Ward. I've kind of softened my pursuit, if you will, of Joe Adell, because I feel they picked between one of those two guys. It was, we're going to move Taylor Ward for pitching, but that means we're keeping Joe Adell. And that made the most sense for them. Younger, more years of control. So the Royals, I don't see them being able to make a play, probably because their asking price will remain the same. Carter Jensen, Blake Mitchell, maybe a Noah Cameron, and they're not going to give up those guys to the Angels. One name that was brought up to me by a listener, actually, which I actually follow the Giants pretty closely. My brother lives out in San Francisco. He's a Giants fan. So I've seen plenty of Elliot Ramos out there, right-handed outfielder, has a ton of pop, was one of the few guys to go into the McCovey Cove hitting from the right side. We saw Buster Posey do it for a number of years. Elliot Ramos was able to do it on the last game, I believe, of 2024. I mean, he's got tremendous pop for a ballpark that is hard for right-handed hitters to succeed in. And the downside to it, though, as much as I like Elliot Ramos, I like the bat. He's an above-average bat. He is so poor defensively in left field, and that doesn't scream Royals to me. I feel that whoever they get in this trade, they're going to have to handle left field a little bit. I mean, they don't need to be leading the league in outs above average or defensive runs saved. But keep in mind, Lucas, they're playing a first baseman in right field. So you don't want to have below average defense in right field and then also have below average defense in left field. It doesn't matter if you got Kyle Isbell in center at that point or Harrison Bader. You need to be able to have two out of those three guys that can handle the spot because Kauffman Stadium favors pitching. This pitching staff needs a good defensive outfield. Not sure you'd have that with Elliot Ramos and Jack Caglione, but I like the bat. That would be another name I'd throw out there for sure.
For sure. No, that's great. Yeah, I've been trying to just kind of figure out and manipulate some things myself. Obviously, it's all just me putting some things together, but that's a great one to really consider. Now, obviously, you mentioned Harrison Bader, and that's somebody that we've heard kind of maybe potentially as an option. I'm not quite sure where his mindset is. Is he at the point where he wants to just be with a true contender in one of those major markets like Philly where he got to go experience? You know, he's played multiple times throughout New York. And so I'm kind of curious to see how he wants to play the free agent market. Can you kind of talk, and I know you've done it with your mailbag and people have asked you multiple times, but just to kind of reemphasize how valuable he might be to the Kansas City Royals if they were to add him in free agency.
You know, there's going to be pushback simply because he's coming off of a great year where the two previous ones were really poor. So you're going to have fans and other people that, you know, cover this sport that say, nah, he's bound for regression. It feels that he's going to be that guy that wants a 2 to 3 year deal and then is just ghastly again this year. The upside to it, though, is that one, Harrison Bader, even on a 2-year deal, is not going to be expensive, right? The Royals are in a different world now than they were 10 years ago, where they'd be maybe scared off by a 2-year, $24 million deal. John Sherman's willing to spend if J.J. Picollo goes to him and says, we really want this guy. We really feel this guy's going to be a fit. That's how it's worked in the past. You know, they have those conversations, and it's, you know, J.J. saying, hey, we really need Seth Lugo. Hey, we really need Michael Walker. Okay, here's the money to go and get him. Hey, we missed out on the bat last offseason. We need to get a guy like Carlos Estevez. All right, here's the money to go get Carlos Estevez. So Bader is not going to outprice the Royals, and there's not many good outfield free agents. That's what I've really tried to hammer in, you know, the last couple of weeks is, you know, if the trades aren't happening, it doesn't mean they're going to pivot to free agency because there's really nobody out there that makes a ton of sense for the Royals other than Harrison Bader. Harrison Bader feels very Royal because of how good defensively he is. He is a right-handed bat. They were talking about needing a right-handed bat to complement Jack Caglione. Kyle Isbell, though, you know, we didn't really talk about that much last offseason, he was a platoon bat. He barely played against left-handed pitching. So you go out there and get Harrison Bader, his pushback would be, well, I want to start every day. If I'm going to get a 2 to 3 year deal, I'm not going to be a a platoon right-handed bat that, how often do you see left-handers throughout a series? You might see one starter, but you're going to see a lot of righties throughout the year. In fact, there was some stat out there where like 70% of their games last year, the Royals faced a starting right-handed pitcher. So I would imagine Harrison Bader, if he got a 2 to 3 year deal with the Royals, he's going to be starting. Like, let's get that out of the way here where, it's not going to be we're going to pay him $12 million a year to be the backup to Isbell and Jack Caglione. To me, that would almost signal we're going to put Harrison Bader in center field. Kyle Isbell becomes our fourth outfielder, which I've always believed is his perfect spot for this team because of his defense, because of his speed, and because of his bat. He is the perfect fourth outfielder for this team, but you're going to have to run the risk that Harrison Bader really flashed some potential in a contract year, and then he's not going to live up to those numbers in 2026. But I feel from what's out there, unless you want to give Rob Refsnyder a 1 year deal and Austin Hayes a 1 year deal, I mean, Harrison Bader feels like a safer bet because even if he hits 240 or 250, you're getting elite defense, whether it be in center field or in right field. And I feel the Royals would maybe want to go that route. I mean, I have seen him linked to the Royals more than any other player this offseason.
For sure. No, and that's one that I'm really kind of intrigued. I think that he fits just as well as anybody from a free agency standpoint. And like you said, I don't think he's going to cost a bag. I don't think it's going to be something extreme. It's like almost perfect. So hopefully they get that done. That'd be pretty cool. I'd be pretty hyped about that one. Now my final kind of free agency thing is really what the moves we've made so far. I'm a big fan on what we've done in the bullpen. Now, Jack, if I need to pump the brakes, go ahead and tell me. The fandom might be coming out, but I was next level hyped when we got Alex Lang. I think obviously he had a down season due to the injury and kind of just figuring things back out, I feel like. But prior to that, I mean, he's a local guy from Lee Summit West. He dominated at LSU. He goes and is an elite closer for the Tigers, and then we sign him. Now, I think, obviously, with this pitching staff kind of working him back in, maybe some comfortability of being back in Kansas City, I was hyped about that. And again, this is the one I'm telling you, if I need to pump the brakes, let me know. But I'm really intrigued and happy we brought back James McArthur. I think that him not necessarily being forced into the closing role, him being healthy, that just adds you another pretty decent piece to the bullpen. And I think this thing's shaping up to be pretty solid. What are your thoughts on where we're at with the bullpen and the additions or re-additions we've made?
Yeah, I think that the reacquiring, if you will, though he just had to, get tendered a contract with James McArthur, I thought it was a fine, low-risk move. Same thing for Alex Lang, too. I mean, these are two guys that can really spin it. It's very clear with the one that excites me more is definitely Alex Lang, because for a guy that's been hurt the last 2 years, clearly the Royals pitching staff said, let's get him in here and let's see if he still has something. And the Royals have built up that reputation of when they go out there and get somebody for cheap like this that's been given up on by another team, it raises your eyebrows a little bit in the same way that it was for Tampa Bay and still is for Tampa Bay. Same way it is for Cleveland, the same way it is for the Astros and the Dodgers. It's like, okay, he failed there or he couldn't stay healthy there. He's probably going to catch on in Kansas City now, isn't he? I mean, last two off seasons, Lucas, Sam Long, given up on by the Athletics. It ended poorly in his final year in Kansas City, but they got a tremendous year out of him in a postseason run. That was a solid season for Sam Long. Last year, it was Taylor Clark, where everybody in December is going, why the hell would they bring Taylor Clark back? There's no room in this bullpen. And he was fine. He was good, but it's a minor league invite. Or a minor league deal with a spring training invite. So you feel fine about the high reward, the low risk there. And for Alex Lang and James McArthur, look, go into spring training, see what they have there. Not that it dictates everything, but I remember 2 to 3 years ago when you'd face that Tigers bullpen, and it was before they took off like they have now, Alex Lang was the one that I feared the most because he had this, power 88, 89 mile an hour curveball that was nearly unhittable. And then he ran into a slew of injuries. He just couldn't stay healthy. And that happens in baseball. But for what they gave these two guys, it's totally fine. I have always said this every offseason. Give those deals to like 10 guys for your bullpen. Go give 20 minor league deals to all these guys and try them out in camp. I know you can't bring 200 guys to surprise Arizona, but go identify certain guys where you like one pitch. And that's what I thought Brian Sweeney and Zach Bowe before he left for Chicago, and I believe Mike McFerrin's going to be able to do, because he was, a part of the pitching lab at Wake Forest and then was working with the Athletics minor league development. But you're going to have these guys that look at different pitchers and say, okay, do they have one pitch that we really like? And for Alex Lang, it's that curveball. He can still spin it pretty good if he's healthy. That's a plus pitch for him. And you really try to zero in on that. Whereas in the past, it was, well, we like this guy and we like that he throws hard. Well, that's just so basic now, right? You want to be able to look at a guy and say, that pitch is really good. Let's give him this other pitch too. Like when they got Michael Lorenzen at the trade deadline, they gave him that slider to work with. And it absolutely, helped him in the back half of 2024. And that's why I've got faith in Brian Sweeney, Mike McFerrin, Mitch Stetter, to be able to work with these guys and see what they have in camp. I for one, am so ecstatic to see what these guys have, because the fact the Tigers gave up on him, DFA'd him, I understand why they did. But the Royals that quickly to strike a deal and give him a major league deal, they clearly believe that he's got something in store for 2026.
So I think I like the versatility. I like what they're doing. I really do. And I'm amped for that bullpen. Now, obviously, I know you're busy and we're going to wrap this thing up, but you're going to spring training. And I think that's insane. Little kind of personal note, my wife's family actually lives in Surprise. So we've gone down to the facility a few times and got to experience it, but I've never got to experience it from a media's perspective. Can you kind of just talk about like the excitement that you kind of have? Obviously, we were still a little bit of ways, but the excitement you have going down to spring training and how that really kind of kicks off baseball for you and the ability to interview some of these guys. And I know you talked about in the mailbag who you're excited to talk to, but can you just kind of touch on the spring training piece?
Yeah, I mean, I really believe in sports, there's no greater event to be at. This will sound wild to you, but there really is no greater event to be at, in my opinion, covering something than spring training, because it is the calm before the storm, and we get down there shortly after pitchers and catchers have reported. So we usually show up on the first Monday after pitchers and catchers report. So the whole team is down there. It's the first full squad workout. So you know that, and most of these guys have already been down there. Like they call it the first full squad workout. We know that Bobby and Vinnie have been down there for a week. Like they show up when the pitchers and catchers do. Very few guys are showing up unless they've got other stuff going on personally on that Monday. But the reason it's so great is it's the calm before the storm. It's not, a place where there's 40 cameras out there and a bunch of reporters. Like I've done spring training and the All-Star game. And the All-Star game is a joy. But I'd always say the All-Star game is fun to watch as a fan for covering with the media, because there are hundreds of people there. And people, like when Shohei Ohtani was at the All-Star game, which he, of course, always has been, but there was, 50 to 60 reporters from Japan alone that were there to cover. So you talk about a press box, you talk about getting interviews one-on-one, you ain't getting that at the All-Star game. In Surprise, Arizona, it's quiet. It's just a beautiful little city. You can see the mountains. The weather is gorgeous at that point in time, and you get such the personal feel of baseball. You hear the crack of the bat. You got the cleats against the concrete, right? The clicking that it has. It's almost like this therapeutic thing for me, because baseball's back. Then when they're on the dirt and you can hear the glove popping, like it's almost that, I can't think of any other term other than ASMR for those that know what that is. It's like I could listen to that all day long of just the sounds of baseball. And you get these one-on-one interviews with guys that are showing up refreshed. They're ready to go. They're geared up. You get some of these guys that, are ready to talk to, like they're all excited. Nobody's in a bad mood. And then you get like the conversations on the side of, what they're doing in their meantime. I remember walking and talking with Lucas Ursig, not recording anything, about he was going to play golf afterwards and who he was playing golf with and how his game has been and what's the best part of his game. And it's like, it's not treated as this, I have limited time, I need to go out there and do all these interviews one by one and just keep it strictly baseball. You kind of get to go and just enjoy it. And then you get to see, first and foremost, some of these guys that are popping up a little bit. I mean, Jack Caglione showed up on that Monday, and he was the talk. And there's Jeff Passan in the clubhouse, and there's, Chris Rose, and MLB Network is there. But It's like they showed up on Wednesday, so we had 2 days already to speak with Jack Caglione. And, Annie Rogers and Jalen Thompson, they're just great people to talk with, too. So enjoyable to be covering those things out there with them. They're so helpful when I'm down there of, getting in contact. The Royals PR team, Sam Mellinger, Nick Capel, they all do such a great job of setting things up. And I can't wait to be back there again because I know there will be some new names to talk to and new storylines to cover.
Heck yeah, I'm excited. I hope you get the opportunity to get Carter Jensen. If you haven't had the opportunity, I had the opportunity to interview him. He's absolutely stellar. He's a great kid. And I say kid because I'm definitely older. But Carter Jensen's a great interview. Cool. You need to, if you get the chance, talk to him about golf. He's a big time golfer. He loves to swing the stick. So Jack, I know you produce a show, so I appreciate you coming on. I really do. I look forward to having you on again. This was incredible. Hopefully we can talk some more free agency, some more trades, and I didn't even get to talk to you about Jonathan India, which I'm excited to do. So we'll have you on again, and we'll go through all that. So, but we end every video the same way. Can you tell people where to find you? Because I know majority of the people that are going to watch my channel know exactly where to find you, but can you tell people where to find you?
Yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I try to put out, almost daily content there. You can do that at JohnnyJ_15. So that'll be a capital J. Then you got OHNYJ_15. And then you want to listen to podcasts. You don't have Twitter. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll be able to find us over at Locked On Royals.
Heck yeah. Well, I appreciate it, Jack. I really do. And ladies and gentlemen, you know how I end every video. Have a good day.